So, good evening, good morning, good night, depending on where you're connecting. Welcome once again to the I Conversation right here on the Replica Church. It's another special edition. I'm picking up all the series I've been running for a while. But then today I'm narrowing down to look at how we can thrive over grief, and I'm pretty sure this conversation is going to enrich the life of so many people out there. And if you have friends that you think they need to listen to this, you can as well just share the link and invite them. I'm always really excited to do this. Like, this is one of the platforms where we bring together three very critical drivers of change, conversations around environment and how they impact our faith, young people and how issues around young people and how it's challenging and it's shaping the church, and also issues around economy, entrepreneurship, and all of the issues that has to do with business and money. So I'm really excited once again to be doing this. And today, again, I'm not alone. I'm here with my very beautiful friend, Florence. And I said
Yeah.
beautiful because really, why is your face turning red, Florence? Because I said beautiful. Are you not beautiful?
I'm blushing now.
Yeah, so I'm right here with Florence. Florence, why am I seeing Florence Richard on your
That's what Google recognized. I've not started all those changes. My brother, be calming down.
oh, okay. Great. So I'm here with Florence Austin, uh, and
Look
we'll be
at you.
doing this together. Okay. Maybe you should tell us a bit about yourself so that we have a bit of a background, and then it helps us to connect to all the issues we're going to be raising. So just tell us a bit about yourself. I wouldn't want to do the introduction because if I do, I'm sure you won't like the things I'm going to be saying. So let me allow you introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Basically, what you said is what it is. Anyways, I'm just trying to be naughty. But my name is Florence with C. Augustine. And what? I'm a clinical psychologist in training.
Yeah.
I I just recently got married and I'm barely 5 months. Koyan, 6 months.
Yes, we
Okay.
actually got married on the same day.
Yeah. So that's just I love to read, I love to write, though in recent time I'm nowhere close to all this. No writing, no reading. I'm just redundant. But that's me. Yes.
Great, great. And again, one of the things I mentioned when I was writing a bit of a brief for this conversation is it's the question: what happens when the counselor becomes the counselee? Uh,
Yeah.
someone was asking me, what do you mean by that? And I said, just connect to the conversation. Florence is actually a counselor. I can tell a number of young teenagers that Florence has committed her time to helping and mentoring and all of that. So again, she has a very strong background, and not just background, interest in mentoring and in counseling. So let's dive into the conversation. Um, One of the reasons I was looking forward to this conversation is because I know you have not really talked about the issues we're going to be talking about. Uh, I don't think I've heard you talk about them. I don't know. But then tell us a bit about one of your most biggest challenge in life, because again, we're in this series we're looking at daring to thrive, and we all have difficult moments in life, in fact so many of them. But what is one of the most difficult moments of your life?
Okay. Well, yes, he said one because life is full of ups and downs, and we just get into one phase after the other and the rest. Excuse me. For me, I would say that one of my biggest challenge in life was when I lost a loved one,
Yeah.
and not just a loved one as it were, but a lover, someone who had interest in me. And
Yeah.
it's even more interesting and also more hurting that this loss happened just a day after he visited my house. So I was in this relationship, and sometime in 2018, we decided we wanted to get married. Then he visited my parents and declared his intention. And after that, we did the normal marital rights introduction and all that. So a day after the introduction, where
Yeah.
you're expecting you just have to start planning and all of that, then boom,
Yeah.
he had an accident and couldn't even make it. Then he died on the spot. So that was just like it didn't even sound like it was a real thing. It didn't sound true. It didn't sound
Hmm.
believable, but
Yeah.
that was just what happened, and I have to live with the truth, and I'm here today.
Oh, and I mean, I thought you would be sharing these and be crying, but then it's obvious that so much has happened,
A
and there's
lot.
some kind of transitioning that you have transitioned because again, it's not easy to just think back. So now what we're looking at here is the fact that you're talking about very deep-rooted pain in the past. Uh, and again, I know many people listening probably have encountered very difficult uh, events like this, similar to yours. But then tell me a bit about what was the experience like after the event happened? Uh, did you have the kind of support? Because again, a lot of people would say a lot of things, like a lot of people will come around and say a lot of things. Did you have the kind of support you had expected to have, and what was the support like?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, honestly speaking, I okay, so just as I said, we're in a relationship. We're already headed
Yeah.
to becoming husband and wife. So you would
Yeah.
expect that my life practically revolved around this person. In fact,
Yeah.
my going to further my education was as a result of the content of our conversation with this brother while he was alive, because he just
Yeah.
saw me like someone who would want to practice, and he would just be like, you have to really further and all of that. So that was like immediately after service, that was the biggest dream that I had, you know.
Yeah.
Now when this then apart from that, there were others. He had humanity had. So we're just everywhere trying to do what we can do with what we had at the time, while trusting God for the bigger plan in the future. But the
Yeah.
problem was when he died. Now it was I felt like I couldn't do anything. I was wondering, would I
Yeah.
even be able to go to this school? Would I be able to do that and all of that? But there was the biggest fear was not even about what would happen to me as per these material things that I'm talking about. Was
Yeah.
the biggest thing was how the world was going to perceive me, you know.
Yeah.
So I've had few calls come around that time, and somebody will be like, I'm just praying for the family that they will understand and take this thing as the will of God. Because I remember during my time, I remember two people shared their own situation with me. The first person
Wow.
was has he was her own fiance too, was coming to her place, and on his way had an accident, and the whole family were against her. They accused her
Hmm.
and called her names and all of that. The other one was he traveled to see her while his father was sick, just to briefly see her and return. But before he would return, the father became severely sick and was looking for him. He was the firstborn, and was looking for him
Wow.
to give him some to bless him. Then he was nowhere to be found. That was how the father took the blessing and gave his younger brother. True life story. And that was how the relationship crumbled. Why? Because they felt she was bad luck to him. And the same thing happened to that person. So I was having, so this thing happened to me. I wasn't sure of what the future hold. I wasn't sure of what the family will say and how they will view me. I didn't want anybody to go around saying a lot of things, but people would say things anyways. I remember
True.
during the funeral, we were sitting down there. They didn't know that I was the bride to be, and then they just start saying things like Nasarawa people, Nasarawa people are very, very like this, like this. Ah, they're the ones that ate this boy, the witches. Then
Oh.
another person was not saying that no, Nasarawa people don't eat out of their within. They only eat people within their clan. That if it was a Nasarawa person that killed, that I would have been the one who died, not him. And then I was sitting down there, and they were doing those arguments and all of that. It was really
Yeah.
crazy. But I want to say that it turned out very, very different.
Hmm.
That wasn't the situation. It turned out that, first of all, I didn't get anybody accusing me, at least not from the family of the
Hmm.
deceased.
Hmm.
Instead, they were everywhere. I mean, they were
Yeah.
everywhere. They even came to my family to apologize for bringing such disgrace. That was the word the father used. He said, "We are sorry for disgracing you and embarrassing you in such manner." They were consistently in communication with me till the day I got married. As recent as yesterday, I spoke to the
Oh.
mom. She keeps calling and checking how I'm doing. One of the
Hmm.
biggest fears too I also had to deal with was the fact that people say when this kind of thing happens to you, especially that you love the Lord, you're likely to just turn away your back from God and begin to ask questions. I was scared of what my Christian journey was going to look like, but I think instead it turned out to be much better than it is at the time. So what I'll just say is that the experience wasn't so tough on me as
Hmm.
regarding external values. Whatever
Yeah.
difficulty I went through during this period were subtly pressures I put on myself,
Hmm.
psychologically, emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of the level of love I had towards this person.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
You just said something that got me thinking. But did you have questions that you wanted God to answer
Yes, I
during
did
those seasons? Did you
a lot
have
of
doubt
questions.
towards God? Like, what were some of
Yeah.
the questions, and then how were you able to navigate? Because again, for me, that is where I'm trying to nail this conversation. Like,
Yeah.
amidst
Yeah.
this pool of uncertainties, this pool of
Yeah.
fear. You've mentioned a couple of
Yeah.
them. What are people saying? What would they say?
Mm-hmm.
What does
Mm-hmm.
the future look like? And then what
Yeah.
would be your faith? Or how would you even look at God, or how would you relate with God? So talk to
Yeah.
me a bit about your faith. Like, how did you deal with talking to God about this very deep-seated pain and all of that?
Okay, first of all, I remember we had this conversation with you on personal note, and I was
Yeah.
very clear to see that I'm dealing with fear of
Yeah.
what if it happens again. I'm dealing with
Mm-hmm.
I'm dealing with shame, the shame of it's me that this thing has happened to,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also dealing with the guilt. Like if this person had not indicated interest in me, he wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
died. He would have just been in Yobe and nothing would have happened to him. But this happened to him because first he said he loves me, then now
Yeah.
so I'm these were basically the three things that I had to face at that time. That was one. Then
Yeah.
secondly, okay, now the question I had to raise at that point was I even had to ask myself that I was like, that's the question of the guilt. Now
Yeah.
he was the only son, the only son, not just to his father, but to his great grandfather. So he was the only
Yeah.
son in his lineage. So I was feeling guilty that I just cut a whole system of people. Like, am I a good person? So I had to
Mm.
ask God question. And the first the first way God came through for me was this. Now, my mom had a major accident in 2012, very, very major accident. It cost her leg and her neck. She went through two major surgeries at that time. So when I was asking this question of God, if he knew that this was not him, why did you allow us to go this far? And then to what end and all of that, God painted that particular picture to me. That my mom went through a severe accident as that, and he was able to bring her out. That day, my mom
Mm.
said she can't remember, but she saw a nurse who took her from Sabonberki, if you're consultant with Jos, who took her from
Yeah.
Sabonberki to Juice. And until the time we left the hospital, till the day I'm talking to you, we've not seen that nurse. And she went through that period, and there was one of the best surgeon who was on ground that day, that saw through. He personally took my mother's case till the day she was done with all the surgeries and she was discharged. So
Mm.
God painted that picture, and then also painted Akila's picture and said, if at the time he was able to save my mom, and at this
Yeah.
time he allowed Akila to go home, then I should know that it's for
Yeah.
a greater plan. It wasn't like it
Mm.
was beyond him. The accident was not
Mm.
as severe as that of my mother's, but yet
Mm.
God called him home. And
Mm.
bear in mind that this, my friend, had just cut a very, very beautiful relationship with the Lord. He was already working, in a very wonderful way with God. And God
Mm.
took me to Isaiah, where he talks about the fact that it could be that when good people die, we don't ask questions, but it could be
Yeah.
that God is saving them from an impending danger. So those were the
Yeah.
consolation that I had. Then I also looked
Mm.
within myself,
Yeah.
what was it that I was going to learn from this?
Yeah.
I came to agreement that God loves me enough to take anything beautiful from me. I remember
Yeah.
within those period, I remember my previous relationships. I remember
Yeah.
how in my own term I have defined them as beautiful, and then
Mm.
God demanded for them, whether breakup or separation, peaceful separation and all that. And if
Yeah.
this guy, as beautiful, as wonderful our relationship was, and God still demanded for him, then it tells me that the guy who is coming after him is going to be more wonderful and more
Yeah.
beautiful. In fact, that was
Yeah.
just like a very, very strong consolation for me. And at that point, my questions began to reduce. I began to enjoy the healing process. I began
Mm.
to ask less questions and began to trust God to really heal me, as in right within, and not just
Mm.
superficially. Because as I said earlier on, some of the things I went through, they were not things that the society placed on me. They were actually things that I placed on myself. I was pressuring myself, even when, funny enough, even when I felt my healing coming, I felt it was too fast. People were going to say this. Why have I just moved on? But I was healed. I could literally feel that God has healed me of the pain and He's helping me to become a better person. But I lingered
Yeah.
more in that place just because I was considering what people would say and not just what God was doing in my life at the time.
Hmm. I mean, you have just highlighted a couple of things, and one of the things I picked is the fact that God had to take you on a journey back to His faithfulness, even
Yeah.
in worse cases.
Yeah.
And then God again took you fast forwarded to show you the fact that He is able to even do much more bigger. And one of the words that I find very interesting in scripture is the word remember, and
Yeah.
how the word remember it appears almost 2,000 times in scripture or more than, depending on the I mean, Bible scholars said the word remember is one of the words that seems to reoccur in scripture, and how often we forget easily. So, and now you are a counselor, and then you needed counsel. And I don't think if any human being was able to counsel you so much at that moment, uh, if not God. I don't know if I'm right, because it seems like God had to just break through and talk to you about this whole experience and sort of open your eyes to what He has done, what He will do, and what he is already doing in your life. Very
Yeah.
profound thoughts there. Very profound thoughts there. So just to quickly ask, uh, what are the lessons that you like? I know you've mentioned a couple of them, but what are some of the very specific lessons that you've been able to pick through this experience that
Yeah.
you would love to share with probably someone who is going through similar experience or someone who will go through similar experience?
Yeah. Okay. So as I said earlier, I was worried about what will become of me and
Yeah.
how the society will perceive me. So that when God showed me mercy and the society was not, the society was kind to me, I became
Mm,
unkind to myself. So that's
mm,
where that concept where you talked about the counselor becoming the counselee. Now
yeah.
it really bothered me in the way that I'm sitting down on this table and I'm talking to the next person and I'm giving them the things to do. I really do not
Mm,
understand how difficult it is until I got there. One of the
yeah.
things that I learned during this period was that it refined my thoughts and my perception towards things. While in the books, it may look like this is just where to go, as long as we deal with humans, as long as we pay attention to our variations, our differences, we will not always have it so easy. You will not always have a what are they calling it, a client who will jump at the principles and at the sharings they are going to give. We
Mm,
vary, and so we should allow growth and the process to be gradual on everybody. Now, talking about some of the things that I would want to say that helped me during that period, or that I would want to share with somebody who is probably going through this or will go through this, is first of all, you must accept that what has happened to you is real. I
mm,
think that earlier on, I would have had that difficulty because I didn't come to terms with it. I remember
mm,
when his people came to my house, I was rolling on the ground, pulling their legs, saying it's a lie. I refused to delete his number, the pictures. In fact, I had to misplace my, God had permitted my laptop to be stolen, I believe, because I was
mm,
sneaking in. I went to hide the picture somewhere. I would just sneak on my laptop to just go and check it. But I was forming that I was really going well. I wasn't ready to accept that this person is dead and is dead till eternity.
mm,
So first of all, I want to say that we must accept it. Whatever it is that has happened to us, this particular situation, if it happens to us, we must accept that God has called our beloved one.
yeah.
And also, the second thing is that do not reject comfort. Don't reject
Mm,
comfort, because the
mm,
truth is that
mm,
during this period, I had a lot of community around me. I am not a very lone person. I belong to, a community of brethren. But that period of time, just because, as I told you, I was unkind to myself, I wanted to appease men rather than allow God to do what He was doing. I would just be making the healing process difficult for myself. I would want to
mm,
cry overnight. I want to sit, but I felt it. God was working. So don't
mm,
reject comfort. Whatever people are trying to do, people are going through their stuff. So if somebody decides to take out his time, and come and take care of you, please appreciate it, accept it. I remember one day that God was telling me that, do I know that my case is not the worst that has happened to anybody here on earth? People are going through a lot of situation. He painted pictures of somebody collecting debt, and then he's being demanded of. Me, my own is my loved one that has died. This person is still living to face the shame of his
mm,
choices, stupid choices. Somebody's contemplating suicide and all of that. But in all that, people are saying, let's keep quiet about our own and face our sister's own. So I should be able
mm,
to, appreciate them. And that was one of the things I began doing when God's mercy was clear to me. I began to appreciate Him and enjoy the help that He was sending to me. Also, I practice journaling. Journaling
mm,
is, I find it very beautiful, not because of I'm a writer, anything, but I want to think that it's one of the ways that we could just talk to God, when we can't speak. Because for a very long time, I couldn't speak out my prayers, I couldn't bring out my prayers. I was just journaling it. I would write my thoughts, how I felt, how I thought about this, how I thought about that. Sometimes I wrote things that were funny, and as my healing progressed, I came back to them and I could just laugh about them. Some other times I could just like, really, what was I thinking when I said this? They just had a way of, coming out. And when you write your thoughts down, because you're talking to God, you're not just writing that somebody will come and read it. You're talking to God about it. There's this soothing relief it brings, because even in the writing, I was praying. Sometimes it was prayers I was
Mm.
writing. I could pray for the family. I'll pray for myself. I didn't want to just lose out. As I told you, my biggest fear was I didn't want to lose out on my Christian journey, because it was just like, and then when I read posts on Facebook, people are just like, this sister doesn't deserve it. We know her testimony. So it was just like, this sister, this sister, this sister, but I just thank God it didn't turn out that way. Also, I talked about it. This is the first time I'm talking about it publicly to this number of persons, but I made sure I expressed my feelings to those around me. Sometimes I could just put a call. As I said, one of those times we're able to talk with you. I was able to talk to a lot of persons at different times. I didn't hide from it. However I felt, I talk about it. And then also I prayed, you know,
Mm.
I prayed, and I also allowed God to, I accepted God's way of healing me. I knew that it was something that has happened to me that has created an impression. So it's going to take time to also heal. So I didn't hasten my healing. I didn't just jump at it and just start saying, let's just forget that this thing happened. I paid attention, but I didn't also pamper the process. So as
Yeah.
God helps me, I move from one level of help to the other, and today we are here.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Uh, those are some
as
really profound nuggets that, I mean, nobody would ever be able to bring out these key lessons except you experience this. Like, really. Like, I can't tell you if I understand or really uh, have a very first-hand idea of how you felt. But then, I mean, First Corinthians 1 talks about the fact that God, you know, comforts us so that we can also comfort others. So it's like we have to go through it so that we become veterans. So we become professors of comfort. Like right
yeah,
now, I can say, Florence, you have a badge in comforting people in this kind of grief. And
yeah.
again, you can never earn
Yeah.
it without going through it. So very rich
Mm.
thoughts and very, very helpful thoughts. Now on a bigger spectrum, the series I've been covering has been around daring to thrive. Daring to thrive. Like maybe let me force you into uh, a bit of a corner. What were three very significant things that helped you? I mean, you've mentioned a number of things just some minutes ago, but out of the many things that helped you so strongly, what were three very critical things that you feel without those three things? Because again, I want people to know these are the resources we can tap into again when we want to thrive in difficult circumstances. Look at where our country is and all of that. But then, what were three very critical things, like if you're to give somebody uh, some tools, what were three critical things that you felt were very, very helpful during those seasons? Like just three critical things.
Okay, like I mentioned earlier, when I talked about the fact that we shouldn't deny that these things has happened,
Hmm.
I will start from there. This has happened to you, and I want to believe that when God permits things like this to happen to us, because um, maybe I really don't know about your audience, but I'm just speaking from my own end as a believer, that when
Yeah.
God permits these things to happen to us, one of the days he told me is that he said it's not to break us, but rather to make us. And it sounds like
Hmm.
a cliche, like one of those things that we just used to hear from motivational speakers. But I want to tell you
Yeah.
that legit is true. That when God
Hmm.
permits things like this to happen to us, not to break us, but to make us. Now, three things that came out from this from this experience, I would say, was what I did. The first thing I told us was we had a plan that I was going to pursue my MSc. Now, I didn't just sit down and think that the world was over for me. What will I do? I could have given possible excuse, because in fact it was as good as the admission here in the university was gotten. But because of what has happened, I knew I needed to stay away from the family. I also needed to stay away from an environment that people know me. But I wanted to stay true to the course. So
Yeah.
I still went ahead for that course, even in a
Mm.
different, even though in a different environment. I told myself that what has happened to me has just happened to me. It's not a definition of myself. So I took
Mm.
that energy of, okay, even if it's for the cause of the fact that somebody saw something in me that I didn't see at the time, I would honor this. And I'm currently writing my project. By the grace of God, if I become serious, I should back my MSc this year.
Yeah.
So that is it. That is one. Secondly, I started writing now, as I said earlier about journaling. During that period, I thought of blogging. And what was the line that God was giving me? He said, turning, that was the tagline. He said, turning every day's experience to lessons. Those were just it. It came as a result of this. So I share my life lessons. I go out,
Mm.
something happens, I think of something happens, I just think of how God has helped me drill out lessons from these things that have happened, and I'm sharing out to a broader audience out there. This I am thinking, or I believe strongly, maybe I would have done it in later life, but not this fast. But this came as a result of the experience I had. I just felt that
Mm.
this is something I should do. Now,
Mm.
I didn't stay back. That's as I said, there's no room for pity party. It's something that has
Mm.
happened to us, and we shouldn't just, withhold ourselves and think that there's no good that has come out from ourselves. If I was really
Mm.
holding on to how people were thinking, I think I wouldn't go anywhere, because truly people were not even thinking anything. Or people, those who were thinking did not even have so much impact on me as I thought that they do. So the impact
Mm.
was on myself, coming from me to me and on me. So once I understood that, I began moving. I had a platform that time that wasn't very strong, but I told myself I was going to move in that light. I went on to become very serious with that platform. I call it the Choice Pearl International. It's about
Yeah.
a young lady or a young person who basically is for ladies. That's why I'm particular. Who has
Yeah.
found treasure in God and has decided to
Mm.
come to a point of reckless abandon in her pursuit for God. So when we
Mm.
started this Choice Pearl, it wasn't that strong. I didn't know. I just started with few persons. That was
Yeah.
2016. It's this That's 2018. But once this
Mm.
happened after 2018, I saw the energy I brought into it. I saw the need to bring young ladies to that point of reckless abandon in their pursuit
Mm.
of God, irrespective
Mm.
of whether they get what they are looking for or they don't get. Today, we have
Mm.
over 200 young ladies on that platform. Some have been
Mm.
married, some are still single. We still have people
Mm.
doing very well in different walks of life. God has been faithful. So these are some of the highlights I would say that came out, that turned out, that made me to dare to thrive. I didn't allow
Yeah.
the whole situation to, cause a distorted growth or deny me from blossoming. Rather, I
Yeah.
blossomed. I remember, sorry, please let me just say this last.
No, no, no. Go
I
ahead.
remember
Go ahead.
because the world, there's just priority about relationship, romantic relationships now. Even when I knew I started becoming healed and God was helping me, and I was already doing like this, choice pair was the very first thing that I went for after my MSc. So I saw the energy I was putting, the ideas I was bringing to make the platform work. And then sometimes you hear friends and family will just come and tell you, Florence, you need to move on. Florence, you need to move on. And then in my mind, I'm asking, what do you mean by moving on? Now, in their
Mm.
minds, they've already classified moving on as you need to have another relationship. And
Yeah.
I told myself I won't be pressured to do that. And that's another
Yeah.
thing I would like to say, that you should move on when you feel the need to move on. Honestly, let me just say that irrespective of how long your healing will be, take your
Yeah,
time to heal. It's
yeah,
just that, just know that the longer you stay in the position where you are, the
mm,
longer your goals, your ambitions will take. But as long as it is for healing, please take your time to stay. That particular day, I told myself that I would be sure of what I am feeling and what the process is producing in me. But I will
mm,
also not deny myself progress just because I'm claiming to not be healed. So if
mm,
you need to stay longer because of how deep the hurt is, please just be there and make sure you get well. But also,
mm.
just a word of caution that the longer you stay where you are, the longer it will take you to achieve your goals and your ambitions for life. So for me, those were just the three things, and I'm happy today that I moved in that direction. And I also went into a relationship when I was ready, when I
Mm.
felt it was right. And as you can see, I'm thriving.
Yeah, those are very helpful thoughts, and particularly because I think grief is part of life. Like we cannot run away from it. Nobody prays to experience loss of a loved one like you did. But then the beauty is that the story has produced another version of you. And I really feel if you had not gone through this, you would have been a totally different person. And I like the fact that, I mean, scripture is just so true about the fact that gold is refined through fire. And so
Yeah,
this is like your own fire that has sort of refined you. And I don't know if I'm right to say, I think a lot of people just need this kind of fire. God is not the orchestrator of evil.
yeah,
However, God, somebody mentioned to me here that God does not waste experiences. He doesn't
no,
waste experiences. He
yeah,
uses experiences and then he brings out this beautiful, sweet smelling fragrance out of us. And I can smell it. Like I can smell it from here that
yeah,
this experience has sort of refined Florence
yeah,
and has produced some kind of fire, and the world would say ginger. So I can see that God has sort of ginger your swagger. Uh, Florence, thank you so much for agreeing to come here and to share these thoughts with us. I would say I think you have become a grief specialist, and I just trust that many out there would be able to draw from these timeless principles you've shared with us. The fact that we need to acknowledge that this experience is real and not to live in the wall of denial. And then, I mean, some of the things you've mentioned about moving on, and don't pretend that you've moved on when you have not really moved
you
on, and
haven't,
don't be
yeah,
stuck, you know, in that wall of that bubble of grief. And thank you really, because I think what you have shared with us uh, are thoughts that are timeless, because again, we can apply some of these principles even in diverse areas of our lives, because many people live in some sort of a bubble, and God wants us to live outside those bubbles. And the bubble could be anything: grief, it could be even fear, it could be guilt, it could be shame, and a lot of things. And you have shared that you went through those things,
yeah.
and you have come out strongly. So maybe to wrap up our conversation, one of the questions I was looking forward to asking you is uh, one I mean, a lot, you've mentioned a lot of things that have happened to you through the process, and particularly you talked about your faith found some kind of building through the experience. But tell me a bit about what this experience has done to your resilience as a person. Like, and when I say resilience here, I mean your toughness, uh, I mean, has something happened to your resilience? If yes, like tell me a bit about what has happened to your resilience. Like if we rewind to Florence before this grief experience, and we fast forward to Florence after this grief experience, the Florence I'm talking to now, like tell me a bit about the contrast between your resilience and your before and your resilience now. And I will tell you why I'm asking this question.
Okay. Just to say before I respond to this question,
Yes, please.
at the time when I told you I was raising questions and God gave me the scripture that talked about the righteous die and nobody asked question. It could just be
Yeah.
that God was saving them from death. When I grew in this process, one of those days I was praying, God told me that um I really am not used to this. God told me, so I'm trying to I'm difficult. I'm finding it difficult to really point out the way it came.
Yeah.
Is it God that said now, or it's my mind at work? But I want to strongly believe that that was just God because I have passed through the level of emotion. Now I
Yeah.
can think clearly, and He can have
Mm,
an honest conversation with me. And the what was it? It just came like there might not be a reason why this person left. It may not even be because of this. It's just that it pleased God at the time. So
mm,
sometimes we find reasons so that we can give ourselves succor and just say, it's because of this thing that this person left. I remember somebody saying the same thing that that he's just like a seed amongst his friends, that he's like a seed that has died so that you give birth to more seed. And it was very consoling at that time to hear it that my friend has gone because most of his friends need to encounter the Lord. But it may not just be like that. It just may
yeah.
be in our heads, just claiming
Mm,
that that's that, so that we can feel okay that this person has proceeded to be with God and there's no cause for alarm.
mm,
By the way, I know he's in heaven. So, but that's on it. So about the question, resilient. Okay,
yes.
for that particular experience, I'm not really an adventurous person. Me, I
Mm,
just want life to just be the way it is. Let's just be going smooth and smooth. I should even be able to know the next step before I
yeah.
get there. There is no, let's not be stretching ourselves. You understand?
Yeah.
But when this experience happened, one of the things that um one of the things that proved, or an aspect of my life that exhibited resilience, was when I was going to take the next decision to be with another person.
Mm,
Now, I had a lot of thoughts in my mind. So just the way I'm telling people now, it wasn't that sweet at the time. So now that I have grown through the healing, now that I have decided I wanted to go into another relationship that was leading to marriage, I came head on with these thoughts. What if? What if this
mm,
happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? In fact, the night before my introduction with my husband, it was like I couldn't sleep. There were times that I would even tell him that, Kai, this thing will not work. Let's just forget it.
mm,
But I told myself, if what I have learned during this period meant anything to me, if
mhm,
what I have learned by reason of my relationship with God really counted for something, then it's about time I move in the direction that I believe God was leading me.
mm,
Even when we did all that we're supposed to do, and then we had hitches financially, hitches relationally, and all of those things, they were just looking like this is the right time to just get out from this place, because the Florence that was of yesterday wouldn't want
mm,
to be stressed. Like
mm,
I wouldn't, as I said, I would even love to know the next step before we've concluded this one. But
yeah.
I just knew that if God was kind to allow me go through this, and He has promised me that what is coming for me is more beautiful than what left, then I wouldn't know if I don't move in that direction. And that
Yeah.
was why I had to keep moving till the day. Let me, it's a bit funny, but let me share this. So the day we had our introduction, just tell you that this healing, let me use this word, healing, particularly grieving experience,
Yeah.
is a process. It's not a destination. We
Mm-hmm.
don't arrive there. Even
Yeah.
right now, there are still
Yeah.
levels of healing as regarding this experience that I'm still going through. I have
True.
not arrived there. So right, so at that time, that particular day, we had the introduction, everybody went. So psychologically, something was going through my mind, because what happened was, after my fiance of blessed memory left me, was when they called to say that this person had an accident and all of that. So so thinking that I had what it takes to stop the spirit of death, I went to my fiance's house, who is now my husband, to go and spend the whole day there with him. So that in case he's going to die, let me see him dying before me. You know, it was that it was that
Yeah.
bad in my head. What I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like the
Yeah.
process was, I'm healed. I'm no longer holding,
Mm-hmm.
but the experience, the thoughts, the imagination. In fact, he went to
Yeah.
see his mother off, and he took a little while, and I was already apprehensive. I was already
Mm-hmm.
thinking. But immediately the Spirit of God reprimanded me. If you moved to this point in faith, then you will need to continue in faith and not bring doubt or fear. And immediately I
Yeah.
just kept praying and casting, and before I knew, he just walked into the room and all of that, till the day we got married and all that. So the devil will always want to mess up with our minds because of this
Yeah.
experience. As I said, agree that is a real thing that has happened to you. Once you
Mm.
agree, it makes it much easier for you to go through the healing process. But when you live in the denial, it makes it much more difficult. And that is where depression comes in, and then
Yeah.
sometimes suicidal thoughts and even suicidal attempts, because you feel incapacitated to help the situation, when in the real sense you don't even have what it takes to help the situation. So for me,
Mm.
that's just it. The resilience that it has brought in, moving in the direction of my pain, like
Yeah.
facing it head on, and not,
Mm.
averting it or being afar from it.
I mean, you have touched a bit on why I was actually asking this question, because
Okay.
again, the feeling is sometimes we think that it's a straight line, right?
Mm,
So once you acknowledge, you move to the next stage, you move to the next stage, then bam, you're done.
yeah,
But then that was why I mentioned the fact that it's about building resilient faith. And resilience is you can bounce back. You
yeah,
can it's like you're having a relapse, but then you
yeah,
bounce back. You bounce
yeah,
back. And that was why I just wanted you to touch a bit about how you have even sort of journeyed back, journeyed forward, and the
yeah,
fact that it's still a process. But
yeah,
then the faith has been, it's like a rubber band, it has been stretched. So, to a large extent, there are some shocks that you
yeah,
can handle right now. And I think that experiences like this, sometimes that is what it leaves us with if we're able to manage it properly. That our faith becomes resilience, our ability to look at uh, difficulties in life and face them headlong. And I think you have shared that really beautifully from your own experience. Thank you
yeah.
for sharing this time with me. And
Thank
I really appreciate Austin for allowing you uh, to do this with me, despite the fact that I know it's 52 minutes past 8. Thank you so much, Florence. Would you want to just say some few lines of words, like in closing, maybe just some
mm,
few thoughts for some people who probably are just joining us, but then they
mm.
might leave with these golden nuggets from uh, Florence? And well, again, just
Okay.
feel free. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just to add to the concept of resilience, we will not know how resolute we are if we don't expose ourselves to the condition that breaks our resilience.
Mm.
And we will also know the level of healing that has happened to us if exposed to those conditions and we are able to withstand them. Now, the premise for which I'm saying this is because there was a time when I was weak, in the sense that I couldn't even visit some of the places that we went together. It's so bad even with the roads that we took together, because when I take through that road, I'm just flooded with emotion. There are times that it may just be a piece of writing. Maybe I go through our emails that we've shared, and then I see these things, and then it makes me want to break down. But as I began to sense the healing that God was coming for, or that was coming to me, I decided to take my step in faith, to expose myself to these places and be able to function appropriately in them. That's to say that let me say, if I have taken a path before and I felt, this thing is just making me all emotional, and I started crying, as God began to heal me, I began to expose myself to those places, not so that anything, but to see the level of the healing that has happened to me, to know what level is expected of me as well, as I kept journeying. And to God's glory, I would say that after exposing myself to all those conditions, it is true that I wasn't faking the healing, but it really had happened. So that when I came to love another, I gave my all. There wasn't any reservation. I remember one time somebody asked me that, what if Akila appears now? That am I going to leave my husband and follow him? you know and I'm just like, really, did it just mean that? But it's still part of me exposing myself to the possibility. So if this happens, what becomes of me? Have I really experienced the healing that I claim I have experienced? Just to say also, for the very last time, I just want to hammer on the issue of acceptance. Acceptance is a very, very big instrument in this journey of recovery, of healing, of stability that we're talking about, especially for grief. I've seen people 10 years after losing their loved ones, they have not made any kind of progress in their lives. I've seen it. I've seen them, honestly speaking. I know of people who it was 10 years later that they made a move to even do something significant with their life, before talking about moving into marriage, relationship, and all of that. It's not a beautiful thing. And that was why earlier on I said, while I would advise that you should take your time to heal, I'll also be in place the caution that the longer you stay in trying to be healed, the longer you deny yourself the productivity or the ability to achieve your goals. As I said, the reason why God allows us to go through things, issues like this in life, is not to break us, is to make us. And if God is making us, then we should have the energy, we should have the boldness, we should have the faith to move in the direction of His instruction as God brings healing. Don't be like me at the initial state. I felt God had healed me. I saw Him coming through for me. But because I didn't know how human beings were going to perceive it, I lingered in that place. I wanted to prove to the world that I loved Him so much, and I was going to nurse Him, the pain and all of that. I was subjecting myself to unnecessary pain. But I knew that in my heart, I love this person. But I also recognize the fact that God has healed me, but I was interfering with God's healing process just because I wanted to look appealing to men. So in all of this, just observe the process, observe the stages. As God exposes you to one stage after the other, please do not reject comfort. Embrace it and see what you can do with it. Grief is real. It happens to all of us. But if you don't even accept that it has happened to you, it will be difficult for you to deal with it. But once you accept it, your healing process begins. So basically, that's it.
Woo! Those are some golden nuggets, like I mentioned earlier. And I mean, you have a badge. You have a badge. It's a badge of honor. Scars are badges, like really. So the scars will always be there, but then what we use them for or how we use them is what matters. Thank you so much, Florence, for sharing with us. I can see you're already yawning, which is a sign to say it's time to go.
Thank you
So
too.
really appreciate you for this time and for sharing these thoughts with us. Now, thank you so much to all of you out there who have connected uh, to this conversation. I look forward to coming your way with another episode of this same series next week, same time, and right here on Replica Church. And never forget, you matter to God. God bless you.